Welcome to the Head Shepherd podcast. I'm your host, Mark Ferguson, CEO here at NextGen Agri International, where we help livestock managers get the best out of their stock. Before we get started, thank you to our two fantastic sponsors for continuing to sponsor this podcast. MSD Animal Health is perhaps better known as Cooper's Animal Health in Australia and for their Allflex range across the world, with a comprehensive suite of animal health and management products. Honiger is a one-stop shop for wool harvesting and animal fibre removal. The Honiger team have a deep understanding of livestock agriculture, backed by Swiss engineering and a family business dedicated to manufacturing the best. We are grateful to our sponsors for their support, helping us bring Head Shepherd to you each week. And now it's time to get on with this week's episode. Welcome back to Head Shepherd. Hopefully 2025 is going well for you. Great to be here again doing this for another year. This week on the show we have Andrew Glover, which is a great chat about his, progression through the industry. It's something that I'm sure people enjoy. But before we get into that, Sophie, you've written an article this week, or the follow-up to a previous article. What's that about?
Yes, this is the second part of reducing lamb wastage from scanning to weaning. I got a bit carried away, so I had to turn it into a two-part article. This one focuses on birth to weaning and what you can do essentially once the lamb's alive and out there. Things from paddock audits to reducing mob sizes at lambing, even to like mismothering after letting sheep out after marking and stuff like that. So yeah, just a few little tips and tricks to try and get that weaning number closer to your scanning number.
Excellent. So people can find that on the hub, obviously, or any of our socials. There'll be links to it as well. But keep checking out the hub. We're putting up articles every week. We've been consistent on that for the last little while, so definitely jump on there. Also, jump on the website and sign up to the newsletter. There'll be links to all those articles in there as well, and updates from us as well. So if 2025 is your year to change your sheep business, we'd love to be part of that and help with some of the information we're putting out there. It's all of what I've mentioned is free. So yeah, jump on the hub and have a read of that article. But we'll get on with the show and welcome Andrew Glover to Head Shepherd.
Welcome back to Head Shepherd. We're doing another one live, which is great. We like doing the odd one out and about, so we're out here in the Riverina today catching up with Andrew Glover, otherwise known as Gloves. Gloves, thanks for having us today. When did you, we'll start with a few questions, and always we start with a bit of a background. When did you know you sort of wanted a career in ag, and has there ever been anything else you think you might have wanted to do?
Yeah, it's a good question, and something that we probably spend a bit of time pondering about over the years, but yeah, I was always an outside kid growing up. Mum and Dad were both school teachers, and Dad was bitten by the agricultural bug. He's a Sydney boy, but he was bitten by an agricultural bug, and he bought a little property, 300 acres, so I grew up there. And yeah, agriculture and especially sheep, was always something I was interested in. But I did toy with the idea of being a bricklayer or a butcher or something like that, along with every other kid's dream of being an athlete of some description. But sheep are sort of where I've been in agriculture. I think it's a space that's got so many doors that you can open. It's just a matter of finding the one that fits what you want to do.
Yeah, 100%. And you could have played footy because you actually weren't too bad at it.
No, it's all lies. It's all lies, mate. I'm broken down old has-been.
Yeah, right. I guess, talk us through your career today. So lots of stepping stones. You did the contracting, and I guess just where from day one to where we are today.
Yeah, no, it's been a path full of twists and turns, but pretty much early days at high school, I found a passion for agriculture, the subject agriculture, but I had a really good careers advisor who was a mad keen sheep breeder, and I used to skip a few classes that I didn't like, e.g. English, and spend a bit of time in his office talking sheep. So that got me interested, and I was, always keen to get out and do some other external study and whatnot. So I actually completed my wool classing certificate while I was at school in year 11 and 12, 2 nights a week. And from there, went straight from finishing school in Cootamundra to UNE to study a Bachelor of Livestock Science, Sheep and Wool Production. And that was a 4-year course that I completed both internally and externally, like full-time and part-time. And during that time, I worked full-time, as on a cropping place, and I did a bit of interstate truck driving as well towards the back end of the study. In 2009, I'd sort of got the certificate in the mail, and realised that I had $50,000 HEX debt, and I had to work out how I was going to leverage that investment to make a life for myself. So I jumped into the contracting space with a crutching trailer, and the plan was always to build a relationship with the client, to then step out into a consultancy role, try and get some runs on the board, I suppose, and then go into the consultancy role. But that sort of never really fully eventuated because the contracting just got bigger and bigger, to the point where in the last couple of years, towards the back end of that 10-year period of our lives, we were sort of handling 600,000 sheep a year across 115 clients. So that was really big. So from there, we, be honest, probably burnt ourselves out, or burnt myself out a little bit. So I was looking to change the pace and jumped out of the contracting space into a farm manager's role, and was lucky enough to go and be operations manager up at a well-known stud in the Central West, where you do a lot of work, Ferg, where we met each other up at Mumblebone. And from there, I had a really good 5 years there. But then it was just time to scratch that next itch, I suppose. And we're lucky enough to fall into this role here where we are now at Pooginook. And yeah, it's still really excited about where the sheep industry can go, despite the challenges we're all facing with diminishing returns and increasing cost structures. Still think there's a positive, bright future for the right type of sheep in Australia, that's for certain.
Yeah, 100%. Won't disagree with that at all. If we'll hone in on that contractor business for a little bit, the life as a contractor, you would get exposed to lots of different enterprises, yard setups, dogs, work cultures. I guess having that sort of opportunity to look through all those businesses, was there anything consistent across those places that seemed to be a bit more successful than others? Yeah,
without a doubt. Consistency, both in the successful and the unsuccessful places, I would say would be fair. And I was really lucky. I probably didn't realise it until towards the back end of that 10 years of contracting that I was lucky enough to be invited into people's workplaces and businesses, and could cast like a third degree eye, like an external eye over what was going on. And I started asking lots of questions towards the back end of that to try and build my knowledge set and gain some trust, I suppose, in case I did want to step out into that consultancy space. And what the three things that stood out for me, for guys that really were the top end producers of those 115 clients we had on our books, was probably investment in infrastructure, investment in genetics, and investment in their people. With the infrastructure becomes the ability to, run it right at that pointy end. And obviously to get to the pointy end, you've got to have good genetics, and then people, we're all stuffed without people. So, those were probably the three things that really stood out. And yeah, any of those guys that I used to work for are listening, I'd extend a great thanks and gratitude for allowing us to be part of your businesses for so long. It was a good part of our lives, and something that I'll never forget. Yeah, I think they're three keys to any business. And well, obviously you can't control the genetics if you're in a people business, but having those having that people right is critical. Yeah, just the other thing I'll probably put in there, Ferg, too, was the one thing that just stood out for me was the guys who knew their businesses, or who were successful, knew their businesses inside out. They did one or two things and did them really, really well. They weren't what I call a whirlwind farmer. They didn't chase the next fad, so to speak. And the best way to explain it is probably when you get a phone call to say, we've got X amount of sheep to do whatever to, and you turn up and there's 500 less or 500 more. That was generally an indication that the guys didn't have a full handle on their business. So that was probably one thing I missed off that previous question, that those successful guys knew their business and they knew it inside out, but they kept it simple, weren't juggling too many balls, so to speak. Yeah, know your numbers is something we refer to a bit, and yeah, obviously, and you do. Yeah, lots of, I guess, shearing contractors. Any contractor has that experience that where you've come out and crutch a few hundred or whatever, and then there's 1,000 in the yards or whatever. And yeah. It was nearly a weekly occurrence back in the day. Yeah, I mean, it's pretty clear from that job, being a contractor for that many sheep, it takes a massive engine. And I think if we asked, I haven't done this, but if we did ask lots of people how to describe you, I think work ethic and drive would come up near the top of the list. Where does that real drive and work ethic come from to keep the fires burning? Yeah, it's a good question. And I think, to be brutally honest, the drive to be successful has been instilled in me from a young age. Dad was a Sydney born and bred boy that ended up in the bush, followed mum, got married. Anyway, long story short, he was gifted, or he bought 6 Corridor ewes and an old ram and ran them on the back of the Geelong schoolyard. Ended up selling those for $60, the lambs for $60 or something. He thought, how good's farming? I'm going to get into farming. So went and bought 300 tough acres at Coolac in the hills and built a nice house. But his work ethic was something that that sort of had rubbed off on me, but all of my brothers and sisters. I'm one of 4. And to see Dad literally work his hands to the bone every weekend, every spare hour he had to make that little block of dirt financially viable for us was something that I'll probably never. You sort of don't realise it as a kid that you're getting exposed to that, but it rubs off for sure. Yeah. And the best way to sum up the work ethic and where it comes from, not too many people have been up to Mum and Dad's house, but they live up on top of quite a big hill, and Dad and us kids, as we got older, were a bit more help, but hand cemented a 1.5 kilometre driveway by hand because that was the cheapest way to do it. He didn't value his time, rightly or wrongly, but so long days and hard work was something we were used to as kids, and it sort of just rubbed off as I got later in life. But I have worked out that the old analogy, you only get what you get by the sweat of your brow, is true to a degree, but everyone's got to work a little bit smarter, and I'm sort of potentially learning that at nearly 40. So
yeah, I'm not sure I could. I back my work ethic, but I'm not sure I could stare down the barrel of 1.5 km of concreting. No, it was 13, or it was round figures 13 summer holidays. Right.
Dad used to buy a pallet of concrete. When the concrete was done, we'd go on holidays. It was all hand mixed, shovel the sand, shovel the gravel, cart the water, name it.
That is a good way to teach work ethic. Gloves, you're now managing a significant station, Pooginook. It's a big deal. What advice would you give to young, passionate people out there that would be aspiring to sort of take this role on in the future?
Yeah, I think it's potentially a dream job for a lot of guys out there that are aspiring to manage a station, especially one with the aura that Pooginook has in the Riverina. Long-term merino stud, still producing top-end rams, still supplying a lot of rams to the industry. So there's that ability or that potential to influence the industry from a seed stock point of view, and that's obviously a big attraction for me to have taken on this role. But I think the advice that I'd give would be that you just got to take your time to do the apprenticeship. It's a slow road. Gain the experience and be patient. You've got to be really willing to do those jobs, or to start at the bottom to do those jobs that don't really fit what you think you're up to. You might have a $40,000 or a $50,000 hex debt, but you've still got to be willing to drag out that shitty sheep and crutch it, fix that fence, do all those things that we've all had to do. We've all started at the bottom. Just be willing to stay curious, be willing to ask the questions, be willing to throw yourself out in front of the people that make the decision about who's going to be the overseer, who's going to be the assistant manager, who's going to potentially be the manager. Be positive and confident, work hard, but one key piece of advice would be throw the clock away. Clock watches in agriculture don't fit, so don't count hours. It's a 24-hour-a-day, 7-day-a-week job, and that's the stuff that doesn't go unnoticed. So work hard, stay committed, and your time will come. And stay curious would probably be the main thing. Yeah,
great thoughts, and I think 100% agree on that clock watching aspect. It's sort of, I don't know, we came up through an era where there just wasn't an option to be watching what the clock is, and I think we need to. Obviously, every employee has rights, but there's still, if you want to climb, you have to work, and that's the same as in McKinsey and PwC. Like, it's all the big firms are the same, and agriculture is no different. If you want to achieve something, you actually have to bend your back and make it happen.
Yeah, you've got to be a bit of a self-starter. Yeah. You've got to be willing to put the time in, and the harder you work, the more you enjoy the time that you get not to work. And I think it's a key thing that, yes, we've all got entitlements, but sometimes the job at hand overrides that entitlement. Yeah. And you just got to get the job done for the benefit of the business or the company or whoever you're working for, and it doesn't go unnoticed. People take note. So don't. I think when we grew up, Ferg, we didn't have a clock on every device we owned. So unless you had one on your wrist, you were guided by the sun.
Yeah.
And when the sun came up, you went to work, and when it went down, you went home. That's whether that's the old school approach, I don't know. But I think that's pretty key, that clock watchers and agriculture are two very different worlds.
Yeah, no, 100%. I think your leadership point's a really good one, and I actually one of my newsletters that's probably been out by the time this is released. But I think it doesn't matter where you are in a business, you need to find a way to lead. Like even if you're the junior shepherd or whatever on a property, you still need to, if you've got something you see wrong, you still need to find a way to, and that's just through communication, as you've already covered. Like leadership can come from all parts of wherever you are in a business. You still have an opportunity to show some leadership.
Yeah, I agree. And leadership has so many different meanings. And when people think of leader, they quite often think a captain, captain of the ship sort of thing. But it's definitely not the case. And it's not the case in a employee business. Like, everyone's got to learn. I think it's a real development piece that's sort of coming into a lot of agriculture, probably because it was missing for a lot of years. It was more of a follow me type.
Yeah.
But if we want to keep staff and we want to attract the right staff, we've got to create buy-in, and the best way to create buy-in is give people an opportunity to lead and take on some of those meaningful tasks as their own, change it to make it suit them and do it better than what we can do it. I think whenever I've employed people, I've always tried to find someone that does the job better than I can do it, and then let them go and do it.
That makes life a lot easier if you can find those people. Yeah. So here at Pooginook, it's home to one of Australia's largest merino stud. The sheep industry is ever changing, it's ever evolving, and to an extent, the merino studs should lead this evolution. What do you see as the features of Pooginook Pole Merino in 2035? So if we could jump in our time machine and fast forward sort of 11 years or 10 and a bit years as we are today, what are we looking at if we wandered out into the yards today?
Can we jump in that time machine and see what the market's going to do in 10 or 11 years' time?
We wouldn't have to be here doing a podcast if we knew that answer, mate.
Yeah, no, that's right. Look, I 100% agree with what you're saying. I think education is key behind a lot of that. The industry needs educators like yourself, and it needs studs to help facilitate that education. Pooginook, I'm lucky to have inherited a great business. Pooginook's been under the Paraway banner for 16 years. It's stood the test of time for all the right reasons. So we're not tipping it upside down, and all we're trying to do now is just take off some of those sharp edges, round the animal out a bit more, become a little bit more resilient, and ultimately more profitable. And whether that's in lamb or wool, or kilos of lamb produced or kilos of wool produced, I think it's probably a combination of both. I'm not convinced that one or the other is going to reign supreme in 10 years. So, no, I think it'll be slow and it'll be subtle changes. And yeah, we're just hopefully, not hopefully, it will be. Pooginook will stand the test of time, and someone else will be able to stand here behind this wool table in 20 years or 10 years or however long I last at the helm, and be able to talk about it as well. So,
yeah, exactly. And I think, I guess if we could get in that crystal ball, I think they're relatively predictable. We've already seen, like we were just chatting before, like the RWS premiums are there, and so that we're seeing the market rewarding the non-meal status of Pooginook. We'll see, the lamb market's bounced back pretty well, and we're going to see that meat market, like all the trends are pretty good for the meat side. So that dual purpose animal is as it already is. We'll just I can imagine that'll just keep building out, and some of the welfare traits will sort of keep kicking in there as well.
Yeah, 100%. And you're right. I think consumers will shape where we need to go, because if we don't listen, we don't have a market. So the RWS side of stuff, quite intriguing at the moment. Like you said, we just sold some wool yesterday that's shown that the premiums are back and back in a big way for some short 68 mil RWS accredited wool. So that's exciting. And I think, the meat market, people have got to eat. Can't see that changing. It's more just a matter of trying to make ourselves resilient and be able to flex when the season, the climate variability we now all face. Bit like yesterday, 30 mil downpour. Our rain seems to be falling in shorter, sharper bursts, and our dry patches are getting longer and more frequent without going down that rabbit hole.
Yeah.
I think it's about building businesses and animal enterprises that can flex. They can ramp up and go hard when the seasons are good, and then tighten back down and when the seasons aren't there, knowing you can get back in quickly when it turns.
Yeah, no, 100%. Doing this interview and being where we are wouldn't be appropriate without mentioning your wife, Peter. Like lots of people in agriculture, it's a team effort. How important to you has been sharing the career journey with Peter?
Yeah, mate. Peter's an amazing woman. She's definitely helped take some of my rough edges off.
Pretty big chisel some days.
Yeah. Some days a chisel isn't big enough. But no, look, she's been a successful entrepreneur in her own right as well. I think that's what made us such a good team, or makes us such a good team, is her ability to sit back and look at the big picture. So obviously raised 4 beautiful boys while I was contracting, and allowed me to run that business and probably run a little bit harder than we should have from a family point of view, but kept us all together. And then, she's been successful, started and ran a very successful laundromat business, which she sold when we left Wellington. She's had food trucks and coffee carts and all sorts of stuff. So, Peter, like you say, it is a team effort. There's no way, I don't think I could have done half of what I've achieved without someone like her beside me. So, she's a very important person, and I know she'll cook us a good feed tonight, Ferg. So we'll be spoiled as usual. But I love her dearly, and couldn't have done it without her.
Yeah, 100%. Gloves, a question we ask everybody, which is the hardest question we ask and often, and that is, what is the last thing you changed your mind about?
Yeah, it's a great question, and one I sort of was trying to come up with something funny to reply to because I did see this question come up. But anyone that knows me knows I change my mind nearly as often as I change my socks, which is daily. So
just to clarify.
Yeah. But it's a very open question, and I was just trying to think of, obviously something funny. But there's one thing that I keep coming back to, and that's probably the Riverina itself. I grew up at Cootamundra in that, some of that best wheat growing country in Australia around Cootamundra, Wallumbeen, through that area there. The Riverina was sort of had this perception of being borderline desert. You're one step off the Great Sandy Desert in South Australia, like it was. But it's been a big eye opener moving down here and seeing how strong this country is, how well the stock do, the lack of pressure that we spoke about today in the car from worms and diseases and things like that. But the ability for the country to respond. We've had 40 mils of rain in the last 2 days. We'll see green pick come now that'll carry our sheep through joining. And when I turned up here in 2023, we took on some agistment cattle that came down very drought ridden out of the north, out of that big drought that was on its way, and within sort of 2 or 3 months they turned around to become quite good looking mob of cattle. So I think the thing I've changed my most on is the ability of this country to be able to grow stock and be productive, and it's probably about trying to find the genotype that'll allow us to do that and make some good returns in the modern era.
Really interesting. And maybe a supplementary question is, in this strong country, people sort of see sheep out here and see, you can literally hear the fleece at the table out here because they grow great fleece weights and are healthy, and they have heaps of lambs because it is really, really strong country. We have to be careful about expecting these sort of genetics to then transform into other environments that aren't so easy, and that's the art, I suppose, of trying to seed stock producers, trying to breed sheep that will not only do well here, but also do well as you shift them into different environments that have different challenges, I suppose. And that's the beauty of, I guess, the breeding bee is to test things here that aren't maybe a challenge here, but we can force them to have a challenge here in worms or whatever. But it's not really heavy worm country. But
and I think you're right there. We're lucky enough to have a big client base that a lot of those guys are east of the Newell Highway, so back into the sort of that high, moderate to high rainfall, dual purpose country, like cropping and grazing country. So we need to be able to breed sheep that can go into those areas, down into Victoria as well. So, key things that we're focusing on and we'll continue to focus on are obviously feet and worms, and dag and things like that, because whilst it may not be top of the tree for our local environment, there are still correlations or fundamentals at play that mean they perform well in our environment in particular years. And last year with our wet summer that turned up, this year with the potential of another wet summer, those key traits will be paramount. So that is the beauty of the art of seed stock breeding, something that I'm only new to, but I'm sure in time we'll get there.
Yeah. 100%. Awesome, mate. Thanks for your time, and yeah, great to have a chat. There'll be plenty more chats over beer after this.
Yeah, no, I look forward to it, Ferg, and looking forward to having you on board, and we'll go from there.
Cheers, mate.
Thanks again to Heineken, who are proud world leaders in the manufacturing and supply of professional sheep shearing and clipping equipment. Thank you to MNSD Animal Health and Norflex Livestock Intelligence. They offer an extensive livestock product portfolio focused on animal health management, all backed up by exceptional service. We thank both of these companies for their ongoing support of the Head Shepherd podcast.